People that will join companies next year will be managers on day one. They will just be managing a workforce that is an agentic-based workforce, one that is extremely powerful and sometimes clumsy.
Welcome to Work Lab, the podcast from Microsoft. I'm Molly Wood. On this show, we explore the future of work and the power of AI to amplify human potential and transform organizations. And today's guest is at the forefront of this new world of business. Dan Diazio is Global Consulting AI Leader at EY. We'll be talking about moving from pilot projects to real-world impact, reskilling for the AI era, and what leadership looks like when humans and AI agents team up. EY is in the inaugural class of the Digital Data Design Institute at Harvard Frontier Firm AI Initiative, hosted by Harvard Business School in collaboration with Microsoft. The initiative will research human-AI collaboration, upskill global C-suite leadership, and deliver new insights and tools to help reinvent organizations as frontier firms. Dan, welcome to Work Lab.
I'm excited to join you, Molly.
You've been in this business a long time. Tell me what you have seen and how you've ended up in the moment we're in right now.
EY is a large, complex organization. We have 400,000 people. There is 100 years worth of history and kind of heritage in the businesses and we operate in. It was only a couple of months after ChatGPT had kind of arrived on the scene, and we realized this was very different from the AI of the past. I would say AI of the past was really focused as a discipline. Like there was a team of data scientists and machine learning engineers that were really responsible for taking data and turning that into insights and translating that into actions. That was a part of our organization. What we realized pretty quickly is that AI was going to impact every single corner across every part of our business, and we needed to really rethink what our organization was going to be. So we created a part of our business, we called it EY.ai, which was the symbol for us internally that we need to move from the old business, EY.com, to EY.ai, and that meant a real rescale and rethink of everything that we do across the organization and how we enable our people. I'd say it's been very fundamental, but we really started with a purpose and an intent to be able to drive AI systemically across the business as opposed to just turn it on in a way.
It feels like you saw something really important coming because, to be candid about the elephant in the room, I would say that people feel that the advent of LLMs and the way that people are using AI now could pose a threat to the consulting business that we have always known. I'm putting this gently, but it sounds like EY saw that almost immediately and moved to adapt.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot written about the demise of the knowledge worker in the space of AI, that as cost of knowledge goes to zero, what happens to all of these knowledge workers? And, over time, I didn't have this impression immediately, like there was a bit of shock and awe that happened in the beginning, but over time, I've come to appreciate and believe that the knowledge worker is just totally underrated in this moment.
Let's talk about your career at EY, because you've been there a long time, you've been in this business a long time.
So Molly, this is a really fascinating time. I would say right now, I spend most of my time working on trying to help EY become a frontier firm. And that really means that I focus on four things every day. So first, I'm really working with our teams that are supporting our clients in trying to move from this idea of ideation and experimentation into enterprise scale with their AI agendas. The second is if you make a list of all the industries that are going to be impacted by AI, professional services near the top of that list. So we are actively working to look at everything we do to deliver value for our clients and start to infuse AI to become much more AI powered. The third is we have a historical dedication to a business model that is focused on effort, and we are looking to break that with AI. So there's a lot around commercial model innovation. And then fourth, the very essence of EY is all about our people. So we are working on building training programs, tooling and enablement to really power the workforce. I spend most of my time these days really trying to figure out how we kind of create a new professional services firm that is based much more on AI and disrupting the old one.
There are so many things to unpack there. Let's start with just the EY part of it, just the internal transformation, because of course that's incredibly valuable when it comes to helping clients, but I would imagine presents its own set of challenges given the size and history of a firm like EY.
So Molly, if I can tell you a story.
Say more. Absolutely.
So shortly after ChatGPT came onto the scene, we realized that our clients were being bombarded by PowerPoints explaining what AI was. And you can't learn that much about how these things work from a PowerPoint. So we created something inside our organization that we called a masterclass. We would show up with laptops in our clients' often their boardroom or with their management committee. And we had some simple tools and a script. Often that script was to be able to use AI to build a new snack product in a lot of ways. So it was kind of simple, it was guided, it was scripted, but it got their hands on the keyboards. And it was fascinating, like just to watch this magic happen where CEOs were working in teams with their management committee, building new products, creating new marketing plans, creating jingles that they could use to advertise it, and then pitching it back to their committees. So it was really, really powerful. But then we took a step back. We've done this hundreds of times now. And I've looked at the results of all the images of the products that people have built over time. And it's all the same looking stuff. So it's all the same sort of packaging. It's all the same ingredients, the same recipes, the same marketing plans. Like if this stuff were to come true, we would have a global shortage of matcha and monk fruit everywhere. But it's a lot of the same. So what that kind of really translates to us is AI makes it very easy to produce something good, but it kind of commoditizes the output.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, it raises the floor, but it doesn't raise the ceiling. So what does it take to actually raise the ceiling? And what we say at EY is that it's AI and something. You have to bring context to be able to really unlock its potential. We often refer to these things as the big four. So you need to have creativity, you need to have critical thinking, systems thinking, and deep domain expertise to be able to really get what's possible into the system, to work together with the system to be able to create the right and best output. And in a lot of ways, that's essentially what consultants are very good at. So we see that the role of the consultant is going to shift from one that does a lot of work and produces content to one that is much more of a creator and using agents to be able to do a lot of that work.
I mean, and as you describe it, it sounds like what you're saying is we're going to have our consultants go back to being great, right? Like not that they weren't great to start with, but that there is a up-leveling that is required to not only stay ahead, but be the best.
And I think they have, often we find that consultants have context that exists outside the organization in which they're supporting's four walls. And that is extremely valuable to be able to get the most out of AI. So I do think it is a big change to move from the old consulting model to the new consulting model. But I don't think that work goes away. It changes, and I think it becomes more important.
Let's talk about your clients now. How often are you now telling this story to them?
I think this is, we are going through a period right now where there's too much focus on productivity and there's not as much focus as needed on growth. And this is very much part of the growth agenda, how we start to move from thinking about what we do today and how we can use technology to automate it to how we can start to empower people to start to create the businesses of the future. So it is probably a daily part of the talk tracks that I have with clients.
Is it like a matcha granola bar? Like, what are we talking here?
There's like some monk fruit in it, some matcha, often some like natural chocolate. I mean, the same packaging, it's very crusty looking, deep greens and browns, very environmentally friendly.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of want to try it. But we're off topic. As you start to socialize the adoption of this technology with this really important realization, right? That your human skills matter, that your context matters, that your internal data and the context that brings you as a business matter. What kind of specifics are you starting to talk to people about when it comes to adoption? Like, are we building a playbook at last?
Yes, I think we have the beginnings of a playbook that's been really effective for many of the clients that we've been supporting. The last couple of years have been an investment in technology. You're building tools, and when you use those tools and you expect to get value out of those tools, what do? You say, does the tool do what my person did before? And then you get into this productivity loop. And unfortunately, productivity has a limit. Like there's only so much value you can create with productivity. Growth has no limit associated with it. So we see that in order to be successful, you referred to a playbook earlier, Molly. In order to be successful, it takes three things. It takes the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set. And right now, most of the investments have gone towards the tool set. There's not as much in the mindset and the skill set. So what we see is enterprise transformation actually begins with the intent of how we start to frame the problem, how we start to look after the objectives of what we're trying to get out of AI. Are we just using it to do what we do today, or are we going to reinvent the entire new way of working? And that shift is something that I think we're starting to see over the last couple of months of moving away from use cases towards more of a reinvention agenda.
And so how is the concept and the introduction of agentic tools and agentic AI starting to change this conversation even more? Because it feels to me like that's a bit of a gateway drug to really thinking about transformation in a different way, not just productivity, but new types of employees.
Yeah. So new types of employees, it's such an interesting concept. Like I think next year will be the first year that when you work at a company, you will be a manager and you will not just have a human workforce in which you're managing. And agents are going to be really responsible for driving a lot of what we call at EY, the toil that nobody wants to do, and to start to drive a lot of that execution path. But agents are still subject to the same statistical sameness if you use them to do your critical thinking. So the real sequence of work should be human, agent, and then human. And so for that reason, I don't really see it changing the need to really focus on the mindset and the skill set, because what companies are going to be after is driving differentiation from their competitors and being able to create new markets. And the AI is going to create the same predictable output for you as it would for somebody else if you're not using that context with it.
So how does that progression that you've described help companies become frontier firms, transition away from the way they used to do things?
Yeah, when it starts with the strategy of what is it that we want to do and how do we intend to create value, what we often say to our clients is create a point of view that you would be comfortable taking to your investors on what your strategy would be. Like the value that you're creating with AI is not in your portfolio of things that you're doing. I mean, it's good and it's valuable. It's kind of like going to the gym if you're trying to run the New York Marathon. Like gym work and practice runs, they're helpful, but they're not the marathon. And instead, start to think about what the main objective is and where value is going to be created. And that often manifests itself in 2 to 3 pages of like just plain text. When you have that, that helps you set the mindset, skill set, and the tool set objective, because you shift from an approach of just implementing AI everywhere to start to think, my marketing function, I'm going to completely reinvent my marketing function. I'm going to target not just people, but I'm going to target being able to market to people's agents that are going to buy the products on their behalf. And you start to get into just a different territory and a different space than where the narrative has been placed in time.
It's so interesting as you're describing this, because it sounds like that's how you should always be thinking about business. But I understand that when a tool like this comes along, people can have one of two responses, right? One is just like, we got to put it on everything. We got to smear some of this peanut butter and jelly on across everything that we're doing. Or we might tiptoe in with a couple of pilots and then kind of wait for other firms to figure it out and then come in all the way. And I really hear you describing a third and better way.
I think the practical reality is the first two is what we've seen over the course of the last 3 years. And that's partly because this is an extremely powerful technology that we are still learning all the right controls to be able to put this at scale inside of organizations. We at EY have something we refer to as the blueprint. So when you shift away and you think about a function that runs AI natively, as if you've built it for the era in which we're in today, then that's not just a process that's AI powered. You have multiple layers. You have connectivity into the sources that you engage with today, because it becomes a big question. Do you want to change and rip out everything that you've invested in from a technology perspective? But then you have an AI native platform. You have an intelligence layer. You have a control layer. The control layer is actually responsible for maintaining how much autonomy do you give these agents? And like simple things like, where do you put the agents? Do you put the agents in the HR master, or do you put them in some other registration? And what access do they have to be able to run your business? And then you start to layer in the process, what the new jobs are of the future, and where and how you create value. And when you stack that up together, that is the playbook for how you become a much more frontier-focused business in the area that you want to start to compete in. Over time, doing that in different places allows you to work towards becoming the frontier firm.
When you talk to your clients about their competition, is it firms that are moving faster to become frontier firms, or is it AI-first companies that are coming up behind them?
I would say that all, of course, Molly, that depends on the industries in which we're focused on, but most of my clients are really concerned about the competitors and the disruptors that they do not see and they are not competing with today. It's the AI natives. I mean, there are many companies that are 40 or 50 people companies that have multi-billion-dollar valuations, and they are starting to be a very disruptive force for established businesses. And you don't see them, and then all of a sudden, they are a billion-dollar company and starting to really eat into your business model. I would say that's driving a majority of the strategic imperative inside these organizations.
Yeah, that's always been a hard thing to keep up with.
You're kind of trying to imagine the anatomy of your disruptor as if it's this like shadow box of a person or a company. And it is really challenging. But what I have seen, I would say over the last 6 months that is quite different now, is that in the beginning, everybody at the executive team needed to know about AI. So the education sessions, I referred to those master classes, those were supported by the executives, in many cases by the boards. Then slowly it became a technology thing, where it became the responsibility of the CIO or the CTO to be able to scale out the technology. As we start to get more into mindset, skill set being really needed investment buckets to balance out, the true transformative power, it seems to be something that is going back up to the CEO and the executive leaders in the company to start to set the vision and the strategy. So that natural progression, we tend to overestimate things in the short term and underestimate them in the long term. Like perhaps that is what we should have predicted over time, but we do feel there's an inflection point happening where companies are starting to revisit the way they're thinking about AI in their organizations.
Interesting. Before we move off of that, what are some of the benefits that a legacy firm can bring to this conversation? Like we should not assume that every company will be disrupted by a brand new AI native company. Are there things that are built-in benefits for a company that's been around for a long time? Maybe their data set, maybe, their context.
Yeah, I mean, I think really what it comes down to is their scale in a lot of ways. Organizations I've seen, compete against some of these AI native startups. The AI native startups don't like the messiness, which is a corporate reality. Many of these companies have learned in B2B constructs, have learned to be able to sell to an enterprise, to be able to take technology to a complex organization. I'd say that the data flywheel inside of organizations is critically important because that organizational nuance and context is what drives differentiation from just using a general purpose model. And then I'd say also it's the customer reach and contracts. Often these are incredible endowments inside of organizations that really are the points that allow them to be able to kind of move into a new market. Like there are many multi-conglomerate technology companies, and some of them find that their most valuable asset in the AI space are the game consoles that they have and the following of consumers engaging in gaming on their game consoles, because that implicitly has this community that can become the flywheel in which you introduce AI innovation.
Let's talk about employees. Because so far we've talked about leaders, and this is a leadership challenge, bringing employees along. EY has launched an initiative to upskill tens of thousands of professionals in AI. Talk about how important this is and how you get it done in organizations.
Yeah, this is something that as we are a people-based business and we will be a people-based business, this is something that is of critical importance to us in our organization. I'll speak for our consulting organization. Last year, we built a full curriculum for all of our employees at EY to get introduced, to get the foundations, but then to start to teach AI to them in the context of their jobs. And I referred to using AI to move into a creator-based economy and to be able to do what's not possible in AI itself. We call that the power of the and. So we're working on teaching our people how to find their and, how to take their deep domain expertise and turn that into a strategic differentiator in the way that they engage with AI to create unique content. So we rolled this out to all of our people, and we feel really good about it because we've seen our employee engagement scores go up as a result of that. We feel that people feel more in the driver's seat of how they can start to shape AI as opposed to have AI happen to them. So it's been an investment that we will continue to make in all of our people across the organization every year.
This is such a great point that you're bringing up because there can be a lot of built-in resistance or skepticism or concern. You know, we would be lying if we said that didn't exist within organizations. And it really is a leadership challenge to champion this, to do it in partnership with your employees.
Yeah. We run this poll asking employees how engaged they are and how much they're getting what they need from AI. Recently, about 85% of them said they were really excited for agentic AI, but 86% of them said they had to learn it on their own. Most of their learning was happening on their own. This is not EY specific. This is broadly across workers. So in order to really engage with people, you need to have a strategy with clear intent, which is, I think, more of a growth strategy than a productivity strategy. You need to have the right investments in helping people develop those skills and give them the opportunity and the tooling to be able to build that muscle. And then I think you have to address the fact that this is going to be an ever-going cycle of change. And like change agility and investing in building out that muscle is critically important and something that, I'd say we're still tackling inside of EY.
How do you communicate that to leaders at other companies? That you may bring them along to, you need to start with your strategy and your desired outcomes and really go deep on the functions that you want to change, but don't leave your employees behind.
Yeah. I mean, this is the story of 2025 right now with AI. It's how do we create more as opposed to, try to use AI to do the same, but with less. Mm-hmm. What we often do inside of EY is we believe that we can talk all we want about what a company should do, but we need to be able to walk the talk as well. And we've invested in something we call our Client Zero program, which is where we are doing this to ourselves first and then showing our clients what's worked and what hasn't worked. And that has been a really effective tool of being able to really drive that. I think the second is when you can come in with a blueprint, these blueprints I was referring to say, this is how you can create value in an AI native way, then you automatically shift to the growth agenda as opposed to just focusing on the productivity agenda.
What can you tell us about what has worked and what hasn't worked?
Okay, so inside of EY,
yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say at EY...
We won't tell anybody.
Don't tell anybody, please. This is off the record.
Just between us.
Yes, okay. So in that case, I think we've done a really good job with our leadership buy-in and engagement. Our leaders, our CEO is very active in driving and shaping our AI agenda. Her direct report is responsible for leading all of the programs that we're doing all across our service lines. And we've cascaded that down into priorities for every geography around the world. So I think leadership buy-in, the investments that we're making in people, in process, and technology, like last year, we've invested over $1 billion of capital into getting ourselves ready to become that frontier firm. The challenging part that you asked for, I'd say, and this is not unique to EY, but this is a massive and fundamental change of the business. For us, we are a business model that has been built on the billable hour, where people monetize their effort. The harder the problem, the harder you have to work, the more you get paid for that particular problem. And we are going to, through AI, start to break that business model, but it fundamentally changes how we price our services and how we value our services. And it's not just us that needs to change. It's also the clients that are going to buy our services in the future need to be along with us for that journey. So that kind of change management, change agility, and breaking down the muscle memory of, being in a business for decades under a consistent business model is something that I would say is the biggest challenge that we are facing, but it's something that is critical for our long-term thriving with AI.
For leaders who want to start or maybe accelerate their organization's AI transformation, what are some concrete places that they can begin? Like, where do you start?
Yeah. Look at where the company creates value inside the organization today. I would say it's a value-based story. It needs to be about growth. Start in those areas. So for many consumer product-based companies, that'll be what products do you build and make inside your organization? And that'll put you down a path of looking at AI to do product innovation and R&D and to be able to help the sales and marketing function or the supply chain function. If you're in a banking function, it becomes a little bit of a different story. Oil and gas is a different story. So I'd say it's a very sector-specific story of think about where you create value. I know you're going to say that I'm giving you like an easy answer, and I'm not getting specific enough.
Well, I have an idea about how we could drill down. I wonder, is there a temptation for companies to start with an underperforming part of the business because that might feel a little bit safer? Like, are you sort of saying, listen, go up the gut, take the thing that you already do the best and try to figure out how you can make it better?
Yeah, that is a great way to say it. In a lot of ways, what we see is organizations wanting to test it out by experimenting in their back office. And then when you do that, you get into this like cost out productivity. AI is going to show returns on its P&L by driving down cost. I think the strategic companies that we see, they are taking on challenging business questions that are existential to their business strategy. And they're using that to start to power their business. And I think getting to a 2 or 3 page reinvention of a function agenda is an easy and tangible way. Well, I shouldn't say easy.
I was gonna say.
Sounds like an easy thing to do, but it is an objective target that you can set that allows you to start to push and move that mindset shift in the organization, that this is not about just doing AI, but it's about changing how we work with AI.
And then if you are an employee, for employees who want to thrive in an AI-first workplace, even if they have been mandated to upskill, what are some of the things that they should focus on right now?
This is probably the biggest revolution of management that has ever happened in our society. And these are really big, bold words, but the corporate ladder used to be that you took a job and you worked hard by building credibility and experience. And ultimately, if you did that really well, you became a manager. And then you managed and oversaw people. And today, the corporate ladder is being completely kicked over. People that will join companies next year will be managers on day one. They will just be managing a workforce that is an agentic-based workforce, one that is extremely powerful and sometimes clumsy. And they'll have to have the requisite skills to be able to do that technological management. So that's where I get into those 4 that I described earlier. I think that really requires that critical thinking, that creativity, that systems thinking, and the domain expertise to make that happen. And I'll just add a 5th one in here because it feels right, but there's got to be a real structured and a real investment in developing the delegation skills, because giving agents instructions to be able to go do the work and then critically evaluating if that happened in the appropriate way is critical for how a worker can thrive by being able to accomplish much more than what was possible yesterday.
This is just partly me and how I like to work, but this sounds like a workplace I would want to be a part of, as opposed to like, I'm an entry-level worker who's going to come in and do a bunch of rote skills and regurgitate things. And to be able to come in and say, have creative thinking, right? Have critical thinking skills, set strategy for an agent. It seems like a good story.
I think there's a lot of upside. I mean, really, at the end of the day, I think this technology will start to power a new economy, just like the internet did. At first, when the internet first came along, we were really worried that it was going to replace all the mail carriers. And then it created trillion-dollar businesses. It's hard to know exactly what those businesses are going to be, but I know those businesses will be created by people that have learned how to scale their impact and their creative thinking by using AI. In any technological revolution, there's always, in the beginning, first fear and then reinvention. And I think we're just coming out of that fear phase right now.
Dan Diazio, thank you so much for the time today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
For more conversations like this one, follow the show and find every episode at Microsoft.com/worklab. I'm your host, Molly Wood. Thank you for listening. If you've got a question or a comment, drop us an email at worklab@Microsoft.com and check out Microsoft's Work Trend Indexes and the WorkLab digital publication, where you'll find all of our past episodes, along with thoughtful stories that explore how business leaders are thriving in today's AI era. You can find all of that at Microsoft.com/worklab. As for this podcast, please rate us, review us, follow us wherever you listen. It helps us out a ton. The WorkLab podcast is a place for experts to share their insights and opinions. As students of the future of work, Microsoft values inputs from a diverse set of voices. That said, the opinions and findings of our guests are their own, and they may not necessarily reflect Microsoft's own research or positions. WorkLab is produced by Microsoft with TriFilm. Sharon Callander and Matthew Duncan produce the podcast with editorial support from John Eilenberg. Jessica Volker is the WorkLab editor.